This recording. Well, welcome to the Make Us Happy Productivity Show. I do Blab every week. It's blab.im/the Snappy Show. So I do a Blab every week at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And today I am doing my first ever recording of the Make Us Happy Productivity Show 15 minutes early. So what I plan on doing was going through some content about this month's topic. And this month's topic is all about measuring performance. And a big part of that, and a lot of people have been giving me questions about it, is tracking time, because I made the statement that, hey, I track every single moment of my life. And I've been doing this now for about a month. And I never used to do every single moment of my life. Before, it was just the work hours and things like that. But I wanted to talk to you today about making time tracking buckets work for you, making these, like, how do you track your time? How do you set it up to where it's useful and you use the information? So you've heard about this time tracking thing. You might be curious about it. You might not even know what I'm talking about or why it's worth it. But I want to tell you a little bit about how to track every single moment of your life. And I mean everything. So I'm putting out a Blab. I'm putting out a blog post tomorrow that'll go through the details of the things I talk about today. So you can find the blog post at makeushappyshow.com/blog. So that's what I plan on doing today. I'll go through this content, and then at 9 p.m., I will open it up to the floor. I know some people are joining in now. I'll open up to the floor for comments and questions like we normally do on Blab. But right now, I'm just going to cover the content. So yeah, thanks for joining, guys. Thanks for joining. The first thing is, if you're going to set up a track every moment of your life, well, first of all, why do you want to do it, right? Well, you want to determine, before you even decide to track your time, the first step is determining what is the value of your time. So are you spending adequate time on the things that matter? You want to figure out, like, what are you worth, because there's a lot of underappreciated time that's being spent. So the time that you spend doing a task that isn't the best value of your time is an opportunity cost. You're giving up the opportunity to make a certain amount of money doing a particular task that somebody else could be doing for less. So for me, I had the opportunity through consulting to earn a considerably greater income than I would potentially burn on a virtual assistant. So I found myself doing a lot of administrative work. I was giving up money doing things that weren't the best use of my time. And frankly, I didn't enjoy them very much. So once I figured out that I could potentially be making more money than I would be spending on a virtual assistant, it was very easy for me to turn that work over to a virtual assistant and make that investment. Had I not tracked every moment of my life, though, every moment of my time, I wouldn't have known how much time I was actually spending on some of those admin tasks. So I know the value of what my rate is as a consultant, as an engineer, as an entrepreneur. I'm very clear about that. So if I'm finding myself doing tasks that aren't equivalent to that value, if it's work, I mean, there's other ways to look at it, and we'll get into that. But if it's work, then there shouldn't be any reason why I'm doing those tasks, because I'm giving up the opportunity to further grow my business and make more money. So that's the first step. Really understand what's the value of your time. And the second step is determining which tasks are worth your time, right? So, and that goes back to defining what your goals are. Really, what are you trying to accomplish with your time? There's what's worth your time in dollars, and there's what's worth your time in life goals. So if somebody's tasked, if you can find a task that somebody else can do and is valued at less than what you've determined your task to be and what your worth is, it's time to figure out how much time you're spending on those things. So it's really separating the wheat from the chaff. I mean, are you spending a lot of time on doing things like transcribing phone calls or scheduling meetings, even checking email? If you guys have been following me, you might know that I've actually been outsourcing 100% of my email now. And the idea is that I would get one summary email per day that would basically go through everything that people are requesting of my time via email. And I basically have to answer and handle that one time a day. In contrast, if there's a task that only you can do, right? If there's an opportunity to produce income that's equivalent to the value of your time, and we want to know how much time you're spending on those tasks. So when you're tracking time, it's like, well, how much time am I spending on tasks that somebody else can do that really isn't worth my time? And then how much time am I spending on those tasks that are? I mean, are you spending time doing things like closing contracts, creating content, speaking? Only these things that you can do. And that's what's going to generate more income for you than it would potentially cost someone else to do that task for you, because somebody else they can't be you. So that in concept is, if you're tracking your time, you want to spend more time doing the high value stuff, the stuff that only you can do. And then there's the other side of it. Like, what's worth your time, not only just in dollars or pounds, or whatever, wherever you're tuning in from, what is your time worth just in life in general? We're all running our businesses for a reason, right? Maybe it's to create more time with our families, or to help feed third world countries. Whatever your reason, it's not always about the money. It's about your investment. So if you're investing in your personal development, or your children, your church activities, you're doing things to better your community, then it's a worthwhile investment. You're not going to get a financial payback on that, but it's the reason why you're doing what you're doing. So are you spending enough time doing the things that matter in life? So the more time that you're spending doing the things that matter in life, the more fulfillment, obviously, that you're gonna incur that comes along with it. So if you're feeling, and this is going to sound a little bit woo-woo, but if you're feeling like unfulfilled overall, it might not be obvious to you that you're not doing the things that really matter to you in life, right? So tracking your time every moment in your life, that for me is a really, really good sanity check on what, how you're spending your time, and then how can you use the data that comes back from tracking it, and then make strategic decisions about how you want to spend your time. So that's step 2. So the first step, again, to go through, is determine what your value of your time is. Step 2 is then determine which tasks are worth your time. Well, step 3 is bucketizing your tasks. So it's where my friend Mike Vardy would say, we put the personal back in personal productivity, because how you bucketize your tasks, or as he would say, Mike would say, how you theme your tasks depends on how you personally, what you personally want to do. You want to have your task broken down in enough detail that you understand 2 things. 1, how much time are you spending on tasks that are worth your time? And 2, how much time are you spending on tasks that are not worth your time? So the only reason that you want to track your time is to determine those 2 things, so that you can develop a baseline and an awareness of what non-value added tasks that you're partaking in that are costing your business and ultimately your life, so that once you have that information, you can develop strategies to spend more time doing the things that matter. So breaking down those tasks into buckets and sub-buckets, that's not the easiest thing to do, but it goes back to, what are you doing with your time? What do you feel like you're spending too much time doing? And then breaking it down like that. So a lot of people have been asking me how I'm spending my time, how am I bucketizing my tasks, and that sort of thing. So the first thing I'd say, I'll just kind of go through my bucket list, because it's a step. We're going to bucketize our tasks. So and bucket list, not the things I'm going to do, not the things I'm going to do when I die, but how I'm breaking out my time when I actually track this stuff. So the first one is sleep. The more I sleep, the better I feel, the more productive I am. So I track sleep. It's probably the most important thing that I could possibly track. The second thing is transportation. I want to know how much time I'm spending in the car week to week, and what the cost of my travel time is. As an entrepreneur, as you know, like, every single moment of our work time there's a cost there. So if I'm not batching my meetings appropriately, it's going to show up in my data, and it's going to show up in my costs. The third thing is eating. I actually track eating, the time that I spend actually preparing and eating meals. And if I see that time is excessive, it's a reason for me to do something like, I don't subscribe to a meal planning subscription or meal planning program, or take advantage of grocery delivery services. The cool thing about all this tracking is that now you have data. You're like, okay, well, I spent last week, for example, 6 or 7 hours preparing meals, right? Well, what could I have been doing with that time for those 6 or 7 hours? If I'm commanding $200 an hour, well, then that's the opportunity cost. Would I be making $200 an hour for all those 6 or 7 hours? Probably not, but there's a good chance I could be taking a certain percentage of that and making money. So then it makes the justification for investing in some of these things weigh a lot more heavily, because you really can't lie with the numbers if you're honest with yourself. So I do track eating. I track reading as well, personal development. The more I read, the more I grow. And I had a personal goal of reading at least 12 books this year. So what that does for me is I can go back and see how much time I'm actually spending reading, and how that's equating to my goal for the number of books that I'm reading, and it's just a good way for me to recalibrate and stay with the program. The next bucket is TV and movies. And this really shouldn't go without too much explanation, but when I see my TV and my movie numbers going up, it's just a really good gut check when I think that there's not really enough time in the day, because oh man, I don't have enough time to do stuff. But you're like, wait a second, I spent 8 or 9 hours watching TV this week. So what could I have done with those 8 or 9 hours? Housework is one of those things when it comes to home stuff, plain and simple. Should we hire a maid? Well, if you have the amount of hours that you're spending on doing housework and things that are sucking up your time, cleaning up and scrubbing the toilets and all that kind of stuff, then housework is a pretty easy justification as well. If you're spending $150, $180 a month on a maid, well, were you spending, potentially if you're making $180 an hour, then were you spending at least 1 hour doing those housework chores, and could you get that back? So the internet, how much time am I spending just like playing around the internet? I track breaks. Breaks might sound kind of weird, but if my break numbers are low and I'm not taking the time to pause and do those, what I call as a productivity guy, Pomodoros, where you basically work for 25 to 50 minutes and then you take a 5 or 10 minute break, I'm more productive if I'm breaking. So if I don't have enough breaks in my schedule in my day, then I know that it's just another opportunity for me to recalibrate. I track time that I spend on my retainer client. So my largest client has me on retainer. And although I don't report hours to my client, I basically get paid by deliverables. I like to track how much time I'm spending working on their business and how productive I am at achieving the agreed upon deliverables that we've come up with each week. The next one is a podcast. So this is a big one for me because it's really the fuel that I use to continue to justify my time tracking efforts. So when I first started tracking my podcast, the Make It Snappy Productivity Show, I was spending over 8 hours a week on this show. It blew my mind. I had no idea I was spending that much time on my show. So tracking my podcast time, that alone allows me to just really understand the value of taking tasks that I'm doing from my podcast. For example, the show notes I'm outsourcing now. My editing I'm outsourcing. I'm even outsourcing scheduling now with interviews and stuff like that. So there's a very, very tangible value to me with that podcast of how much time I'm spending on it before, over 8 hours, to where I'm at now, which is around 3.5. Office work, processing. So there's still some level of administrative tasks that I haven't eliminated from my life. So I track that, and it's important for me to tabulate that stuff over time to see if there's any other adjustments that I can make, that I have a high spike in office tasks, and what could I do about that. And then there's the review time. It's the David Allen weekly review, right? So there's the lovely weekly review from Getting Things Done. So weekly reviews, monthly reviews, quarterly and annual reviews. I track those because if I don't spend a lot of time with the review process, then I am not being very deliberate with how I'm planning my time, and I'm as a result not being as productive. So I definitely track review time. So I'll just go through the other buckets quickly because we're running out of time. I was supposed to only spend 15 minutes on that, and I kind of getting carried away here. But the other buckets are, I track how much time it takes me to blog. When I work out, I track workout time, shower, and dressing. One of the things that's really important to me, and this goes back to those life goal things. So I track how much one-on-one time I spend with each of my boys. So I have different categories for my oldest son, Carter, my youngest son, Ethan. And am I spending appropriate one-on-one time with my children? So that's something that I really wanted to make sure that it was at top priority. And I don't want to compromise that. So when I look at those numbers, and those numbers are low from week to week, I'm like, okay, well, what could I have adjusted to spend more one-on-one time with my kids? Another one is business development. So how many people am I reaching out to? And this is probably the most effective strategy I can have for creating clients to do productivity coaching. Am I reaching out to people? Am I serving them, and that sort of thing? And then marketing is the other piece of that. Am I spending an appropriate amount of time just getting the message out to what I'm doing, and offering, value and content to my audience and my market. So I track that. I track how much time I'm actually spending in coaching sessions. And I also track how much time I'm spending on the pre and post portion of coaching sessions. So is it taking me a lot longer to prep for a session and then do the recap afterwards? I always send out recaps to each of my clients. And when you factor in that combined cost, so the hourly rate that you're thinking that you're potentially commanding for your services goes down because you're spending a lot of time on prep. So that I like to track that because it makes sure that I'm making the best use of my time, and that I'm feeling good about the rates that I'm charging, then I'm still like an economic, or I'm economically viable. I'm profitable. I track strategy time. So how much time am I actually spending thinking about and working on my business, not just in my business. And then I get into social media. I actually break out and parse out like Blab, how much time I'm spending on each of these social media aspects, LinkedIn, Blab, Twitter, and Facebook. I track those separately because I think it's important to see what things are doing and how much engagement is being produced week from week, and realize and trying to figure out if there's a correlation between which social media platforms I've been most active on and that sort of thing. Family time, errands, church activities, and I'm actually developing products as well, digital products that are available for download. So I'm tracking how much time it's taking me to do that. And then the good old home projects, go out and work on. I'm working on building a play set for my boys right now that can climb on and stop tearing up the yard. So how much is all stuff. So that's the big stuff. The last two are the morning and evening ritual buckets. So I have the different things I do for my morning and evening ritual, and I make sure that I'm doing those because the more control I have over my mornings and my evenings, which are kind of the bookend time, if you will, for how I spend it. It's important because if I'm not hitting my marks for those two events, then my days are typically not as productive, and I'm not getting as much done if I'm not routine like that. So those are my buckets. So I want to share that with you because I've been getting a lot of questions about the different buckets that I use. So that's step 3. So I'll go through them one more time. Step 1 is determine the value of your time. Step 2 is determine which tasks are worth your time. Step 3 is to bucketize your tasks. And there's 2 more steps. It's a 5-step process. And step 4 is to use a smartphone app. And I don't want to go too far into the details of how to use an app, but I've said it before. There's 3 main ones that I would put out there to the world that people are using, and I've heard they're pretty good success. There's Toggl, Toggl. There's Hours, and I noticed my friend Jeff Page is on the Blab right now, and shout out to Jeff. He's the one that clued me in on Hours, and the one that I use is A Time Logger 2. So the whole thing is like, do you really want to track your time on paper? Well, the easiest way to track your time is digitally because you have an app, and as you switch tasks, you can just go ahead and click on the task and the clock starts running. The app should be able to go back and modify if you forget to switch your time, be able to go back and modify, but it's always running. So that's the easiest way. And then it has the ability to export a report so that you can look in Excel. And if you really wanted to get geeky about it, you can start running, pivot charts and all the different things that you can potentially do just to zero in on how you're spending your time and looking at it different ways. So if you're looking for a digital app, those 3 meet the mark. It's definitely not an exhausted list, but I'll have the blog post out tomorrow. I'll have links to those apps with videos and how they work and that stuff. But just the point is, like, be strategic about your time. You can create the system using the apps and have the export feature that just really gives you a good overview of how you're spending your time. And the last step, the most important step, is after you've taken the time to actually track it for a few weeks, then it's like, okay, well, how do you develop metrics that matter? So the first thing we talked about, like, well, what's your time worth, right? And then how are you spending the time? And then really what metrics for your business are you trying to accomplish? So if you want to basically have a certain number of coaching sessions, for me, for example, per week, then I go back to my data and I'm like, okay, well, I only spent 2 hours last week doing business development activities, and I only had 1 coaching session this particular week. So it's a very quick way for me to go and look and see how I'm spending my time, and then strategize on how to achieve goals that matter. So really, okay, I want a certain number of paid coaching sessions per week. This is what I'm doing now. So how can I strategize and change the way that I'm spending my time so that I'm spending more value add time on doing business development versus not so much time on social media? So it's like the results are going to be in the data. And as an engineer, there's a certain amount of gut feel, sure, as an entrepreneur, as far as making decisions on where you want to take your business. But then the data doesn't lie. Like you're going to know how you're spending your time, and you're going to know what adjustments that you can make. So I think the only real way for me to not like make anecdotal decisions based on what you think you're doing is to really look at the time and see what you actually are doing. So My biggest metric, and I'll say this as I close out because I'm 6 minutes into, opening this up for questions. Like I said, I want to open this up to the floor and allow some people to call in and talk about, some of these things. But the most important thing, metrics for me, being the productivity guy, and I've said it before, is I don't want to work over 40 hours a week. Even the fact that I'm starting a business and my business is new and I'm doing all these new things, I still believe fundamentally that I can be productive enough to build a successful business in 40 hours a week. Right. So if I'm tracking my time and my time's coming in greater than 40 hours per week, I feel like a hypocrite. So the first thing that I look at when I'm tracking my time is I sum all those work tasks, those things I'm supposed to be doing to develop my business. And I see whether those numbers come in at 40 or not. So that's like one of the biggest metrics for me is like, I want to be productive, and being productive for me is not working over 40 hours a week. I mean, ideally, I want to get it below 40 hours a week, and there's seasons and everything that we do, but that's just an example of a metric that I use. So that's pretty much what I have for content. I mean, the very first time. So I'm actually going to turn this blab recording into a show, the Make It Sappy Productivity Show. It'll be a little bonus episode. It's probably going to be about 20 minutes long. And yeah, that's it. So, I'm going to open up the floor. I'm going to open up some seats. I'm going to unlock this stuff, unlock the seats, and see how you guys are doing. So I'm going to I'll keep the recording going, but I'll have to let my editor know to cut it off here after about 20 minutes. So I'm unlocking the seats, opening it up. If anybody was calling, I see I got a question from Mr. Hectic Dad 01, Jeff Page. How do you avoid over tracking your time with an engineering mindset? It's easy to measure too much. Yes, absolutely agree. Too much fine separation may actually make it harder to analyze what's going on. You're absolutely right, Jeff. And I go back to like what I said when I was like, well, what's really worth your time? So if you're making decisions, and I guess I didn't say this very clearly, like if you're not using the data to make decisions, like that's why I kind of went through each thing that I'm tracking and why. So if I see something like eating, okay, I know that if I'm spending too much time prepping and eating my meals or whatever, there's something that I can do about that. Like there's a decision that I can make to invest in something. So if it's a decision that if I'm tracking data, it's just like when I was in corporate America. If I'm going to use the data, if I'm trying to invest in something or if considering and investing in something, and I want to know how much time I'm doing on that certain something and what was the opportunity cost that was lost. So that's one example. I think that as you got to make it personal. Like you got to take it back to put the personal back in personal productivity. If you're not looking at this data from really what do you want to be spending your time on and what do you want to make decisions on and around, you can make it very simple. Like you can bucketize, like you can have a business development bucket. You can have a kids bucket or a family bucket in general. And you can have like a spiritual aspect, so like the big major things in your life. But if you, and another example for me, and I just apologize for feeling a little scattered here, but like another example is the podcast, right? I have a podcast bucket. It's all in one podcast bucket. But before I put that all into one bucket, I wasn't sure what different aspects of my podcast, what the sub buckets were, like the different activities that went into a podcast. I didn't know how much time they were costing me. So I had the sub buckets of like show notes, of editing, of content creation, like actually writing it up, of recording time, of actually having the interview itself. So like there's all these little sub buckets that went into it. And then I tracked those sub buckets for a time, and I made a decision that, okay, well, show notes is something I don't really necessarily enjoy doing. So can I hire somebody to do it? And once I got the time down, I just lumped it in. Okay, now that I kind of know what the majority time suck is in the podcast, like overarching bucket, now I can lump it back together and see and basically just keep a watchful eye on it to know whether or not I shot my keyboard to know whether or not I'm making progress in that area. So I think that you don't want to measure too much. Yes, I agree, but you want to make sure that whatever you do measure, you'll actually do something with it. You know what I mean? So that's how I'd answer your question. Jeff, you said I was over tracking, so I scaled back to 4 categories: family, personal, business, and household. It's not quite fine grained enough yet, but it does allow for broad strokes of analysis. Yeah, that's good. It's a good start. So I think that, yeah, business and with your schedule, knowing that you don't necessarily have like a routine, it's good to see these different activities that come up, what it's actually costing you in business time. For example, if you just get in a situation where your kids are just bothering you all day long, and what was really going on in your life at the time, and how did that affect your business? So I think that would be a good strategy if you accompany that with some sort of journaling technique, where you can kind of relate it to really what was going on that particular week or month or whatever it might be. I know I had something with Roy had a comment up here. So that reminds me of something we said, what can be measured can be managed. Yeah, that's similar to the Lord Kelvin quote of what's not measured cannot be improved. So I think it's maybe the opposite quote of that, or there's somebody similar that was quoting that. So I'll open the floor up. I know we got Jeff. Deb is on. Deb, you want to call in? Does anybody have any questions or any comments about of tracking time that I didn't cover? The other thing is I kind of want some feedback of what do you think about this idea? So, actually physically recording a podcast over Blab is something new that I wanted to try. Like I said, I've never just been behind the microphone delivering content before. I used to do that over Periscope a little bit, and I always found it to be awkward. But in this case, I'm kind of going through my blog post, so it was a little bit less awkward. So yeah, that's kind of what I got going on. But feel free, anybody wants to call in. And Blab's been kind of weird. So I was talking to somebody recently that said Blab kind of changed the way that they're doing things, as in like anybody, and I'm not sure if this is a rumor or not, I kind of got to confirm it, but you guys can confirm for me that only people that are following me now see that I'm on air, other than it kind of being open to everybody. That's something that one of the people in our POP group told me. I was like, well, that's kind of weird. Why would they even do that? Because I noticed that like the engagement is a little bit lower than it has been. Well, actually a lot lower than it has been in the past. So I was kind of wondering what's happening. So anyway, well, if there's nobody calling in, then here's Deb.
Hey. Chipmunk voice?
No, you're good. You're good. Did you? And Roy's calling in.
I'm on. I'm not going to stay on too long. I'm sitting here listening, and I'm furiously working on tax returns. So trying to get them done. And I've been here every night for like a month late. It's not fun.
Yes, well, that's kind of the world that you're in, but you're going to get away from that world here soon.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but I did want to tell you, I wanted to respond to what you just asked about, which was about the format and how you deliver content to people.
Yeah.
I think you should deliver it any way you can.
Yeah.
And, and then reuse anything you can, because people are very, they're in and out of things. So you're going to catch, somebody might see it twice, but other people will only see it once. So It's a really, it's a smart way to be productive with the face of POP, and
that's right.
And your time from that. And, I think it gets, especially with you now saying, you're going to deliver some content at the beginning, then it works great.
Cool. No, thanks for the feedback. Yeah, it's and the cool thing about Blab is I can also, as I have been doing, but take this video and upload it to YouTube. So certain people that follow me on the YouTube channel will see it, and then obviously the podcast.
Right,
they'll see that, and then the Blab. So it's kind
of
cool.
I don't know any of this stuff yet, but I will.
It's a multi-purpose. This is the one thing like I really do want to hold on to the Blab, because I think it is really powerful. I just don't know. I don't know what the different setting changes or whatever that have happened recently with Blab. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, well, there's that, but that's the way it is when you are, on the one hand, you are having to suffer through that, but on the other hand, you're sort of cutting edge in a fun way. So, that's the good with the bad, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a great idea. Using Blab to also record your video at the same time. That's because that cuts down on having to go back and forth between Periscope and Blab.
It's true. Yeah. And I liked Periscope, but I don't know. It was taking a lot of time. So that I didn't mention that though. That was one thing I was actually tracking over time for a little bit of while, just to kind of get an understanding of how much time. Because I thought, okay, I'm gonna get on Periscope for 10 minutes and I'm gonna talk and that's it. It's over. Well, but then I don't consider, okay, well, there's like the prep time to what I'm actually going to talk about on Periscope, and then on the back end of it, I was taking those and I was putting my little bumpers on the front end and the back end. I was uploading to YouTube, and by the end of it, it was like 45, 50 minutes a day. which was just like, and I was doing it at a time where it was completely interrupting my morning. And if I hadn't tracked that data with Periscope, I wouldn't have made the decision. I probably would have known how much time it really was taking me, and I would have made the decision not to do it anymore. So I just want to welcome Sean and Asif. Thank you guys for joining. Appreciate it. For joining the Blab here. And Hector says it does show on the blab.im homepage that you've got a Blab going. I grabbed it. Okay, well, thanks. Thanks for the heads up, Jeff. And I'm not sure. I wonder if that only shows because you're following me, or if that's open to everybody. But obviously, people are joining in here, so that's good. But I did hear a rumor, and maybe it's just that, like, hey, look, people aren't on Blab tonight, so no big deal. But yeah, so this repurposing thing, I think I'm gonna start doing it. Oh, you were logged in with a testing account. Okay, cool. I'm gonna start doing this. Just basically taking the blog post. I'll put a blog post on typically on Wednesdays. I'll put it out, and then we'll kind of go through that content is what I'm doing tonight. So give everybody opportunity to kind of ask questions about the things that I'm writing about, and just kind of take this. It's like with business and learning and stuff. It's like, how do you take what you're talking about, repurpose it in different ways, and just keep the message consistent, over time.
Right.
I think it's kind of a cool thing that we can do that a lot of times you just kind of lose sight of. I mean, when I first started, I was just what did I run into on that particular day that I want to talk about? And there's going to be some instances of that when you're excited about different things that you've learned, of course. But I think if you make it the best way that you can, kind of feed into each other, it's a lot easier to generate content, and you're going to add more value to that particular content because you're focusing on it and you're learning more, and you're kind of priming your mind over time to think about this sort of thing. So,
well, once again, I have to say I agree with you.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. No, but I think we talked about that when we did our Catalyst group. That whole idea of really trying to zero in on the message. That's something I've been thinking about a lot. So, as we do whatever we do, whatever our thing is that we're putting out there in the world, there's not only the efficiency of the process, but there's the efficiency and productivity of the message itself. So trying to
you're right.
You go back and you think about that, and how can you really, and that's hard for me, by the way. I mean, I'm doing it kind of right now in general. And I keep, stopping and starting and stopping and starting and going, well, what are the main things I'm trying to get through to people, that are really the most important at a core level. And then from there, I can always have dialogue about anything. Anywhere, Facebook group, whatever. So you're right to think about it that way, I think.
So for those who just joined, I did a little different on the Blab today. I recorded an episode of my podcast for the first 15, 20 minutes and kind of opened up the floor afterwards for questions and feedback on the content. So kind of went through tracking every moment of your life. But so you guys, what do you feel like? Are you, and Deb, I don't think you're tracking your time right now, as far as I know. There's a billable hours piece probably, but
yes. And I knew there was something else I wanted to say. I wanted to say about, building your business, that I just did this exercise of saying, okay, what's my big, awesome, gigantic vision, and how much, and so I just started it simply. I said, this is how much I want to make every year. And then I filled it in with the details of what kinds of things those would be, similar to what you were working on and how you do some of your stuff. And I came up to a number that was 19,000 higher than my big grand plan. And what I did was I left lots and lots of prep time room. So I in mine only had like 350 coaching hours a year.
Okay.
So that leaves a lot of time. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, one way of doing it is to say, this is enough, if I can get this amount coming in the doors every year for now, until I'm ready to change it again, then even though I'm only putting a much more modest amount of time in, won't be sitting here at, 11 o'clock at night every night for 2 months. And then it takes the pressure off. And then if you think about that, then you can spend all this extra time giving extra value for the same dollars, because you're going to get them anyway.
Yeah. I think one of the blabs, I mean, that kind of goes back to the small wins a little bit. Just setting goals that you you'll be able to accomplish so that you can gain that momentum, right? Versus that all or nothing mentality that I suffer from oftentimes. Is like, how do you set goals that are reasonable versus like, because me, I just want to say, okay, well, if I can't have 6-pack abs in, my 3-month period of time, then I just don't want to work out. What's the point? But if I set a goal, okay, well, no, my goal is that I'm just going to at least do one ab workout a week. You build up that momentum, right. It kind of goes there. The same thing comes with your goals. I think it's just like that flexibility is super important. So if you had 350 hours, like you're saying,
there were other things that's not the only way I'm going to make money, but it was, a lot less complicated in terms of the number of hours than I thought it was going to be for the actual delivery of the work. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that to give a really great product, especially when you're evolving it, you have to look at what's a reasonable amount of time to work so that it can give you plenty of space to experiment and grow. And part of that is, I think, is really taking a good look at how much are you really worth. I mean, I've been doing what I do for almost 40 years. I mean, I should be able to charge more than what I'm charging at this moment. So I bumped it up. And I said, I am going to make this happen. Yeah.
No, go ahead, Roy.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I found when I was researching on pricing, especially when it's almost like you actually attach the value to your price. So when you raise your rate, all of a sudden you start to attract more people that will value your quality of work more as well. And you get less and less of the people that are acting as if you're just disposable. And you
are so right. Roy, I have battled with that in my career because I'm a sole proprietor accountant. And I can't even begin to describe how often. I mean, I even had a client once beg me to take them back because they couldn't find anybody else around that was cheaper than I was. And I was like, great, that's like such a compliment. I can't believe you actually would even say that to me, I mean, it was, first of all, it was rude, but second of all, it was like, wow. So you want to attract the right people that because when they value it, it means they're ready to do it and hear it.
Yeah, and usually, especially when you're talking to a prospect at first, they can also just be wanting to get a price out of you so that they can take it to another person and say, well, this is cheaper. But I found the fastest way to get that out of their system and know whether they're just shopping around or if they're more wanting to have your quality of services when you ask them, well, are you competing? Are you wanting me to compete on price? Because if you are, you're probably going to find somebody cheaper than me, but they might not do it as well as I could. Something like that.
Yeah, well, you should absolutely. I mean, that's another thing. I mean, I don't haggle about price. I mean, I'm really going to get good at this. I mean, I'm not well practiced, and I'm just for anybody listening. I mean, I think this is scary territory, but it's really what needs to happen. Otherwise, you spend all your time being unproductive in that relationship with them, and then you're not giving them what they really, really probably need. Yeah. And if they're those kind of people, I don't want them. And also, if anybody wants to shop around for what somebody else can offer, I am all for that. I only have to reach my goals, I only have to have like 25 different clients a year. That's not very much.
Well, and that you made me think earlier, just kind of thinking back to the time tracking thing. So, and that's where you start, right? That's when I first started talking about it. Like, what are your goals, or what are you worth? First of all, how do you know what your value is, and then is it worth the time you're spending? Like, what are the tasks you're doing, and is it worth your time? And what are the tasks that you're doing that aren't worth your time? Tracking that. But I think you made me think of Jeff's question earlier of how do you avoid hyper scheduling? Well, you kind of broke it down real easily for me, and I was thinking about that. I'm like, okay, well, you gave the example of if you only did 350 hours of coaching, that was your goal, and you wanted to hit that mark. And if you had like just 2 hyper-focused goals, not so much like just hyper scheduling, but if you just had 2 hyper-focused goals and that's what your concentration was, then perhaps all you need to do really is, rather than tracking every moment of your life, is being very, very vigilant and tracking how much time you're spending on those things.
Yeah.
Right. And then if you're not spending enough time on those things and you have maybe a hypothesis of some of the other things that you're spending there taking away from that, then you start tacking on different things to track. So Jeff, I think that might be a good strategy for somebody like you who's kind of all over the place. And so we got somebody calling in. Nick's calling in.
Sweet.
Hey guys.
Hey Nick, thanks for joining, man.
Love the title.
Thanks, man.
Back off on the slightest bit.
But I was just saying, like, if I think you could start with that. That might be a good strategy. That basically, you just start with, okay, really, what do you want to focus on, and track it for a period of whatever you think's reasonable. If you think you can see progress in a couple of weeks, then track it for a couple of weeks, then do the look back. Or if you think it's going to take 90 days or something like that, then do the look back. But then tacking on other things after that potentially could be taken away. But for me, the easiest part is, okay, I've developed a habit, right? It takes about 3 weeks for me to develop a habit, for anybody, really, a good habit. And I'm tracking everything now. So when I switch tasks, it's kind of second nature to me, but it takes a while to get that point. So I think if you just start, like we said, the small wins, instead of trying to bite off the whole elephant and track every single moment of your life, like I'm doing, then just, what like if it's coaching clients and you want to get 350 sessions a year or 350 hours, then maybe just track business development. How much time you're spending reaching out to potential clients.
Right.
So the reason why I don't think you should back off at all on tracking all your time is if you can't track too much time. The problem is you cannot know what you want to do with your time. Like if you, and it doesn't just mean work. Like if I really value my family and I want to spend time with them, so I don't consider it time wasted if I spend time with my family. And I have business goals, personal goals, life goals. If I have those main goals in my life marked and categorized as like a time thing, then if I track all my time, unless you're Superman, when you first start tracking your time, you're probably blowing 4 hours of your time doing something that has absolutely zero value to you in any way or form.
And it's shocking. It's shocking. Like if you actually look at the data and take it seriously and take yourself seriously when you're tracking, like you can really blow yourself away with what you're spending your time doing.
Holy crap, I spent 2 hours on Facebook and I'm always telling my friends how it's a waste of time.
No doubt, man.
Tech industry, there's an app for that.
Well, that's funny you should say that, because actually I'm totally in a mode right now where my primary goal is to build a fan base. That is what I'm trying to do right now. And I'm not... and of course I have to then slip in the fact that I'm starting a podcast myself and figure out, I'm getting a lot of help to do that so I can minimize how hard that's going to be. And my point is I don't want to be chasing people at some point, but I have to start somewhere with something. So my thinking is be out there in the world, help people, show what I can do by talking about it or whatever. And get people, and having my group page on Facebook is going to be important to me, and just doing that part. And then I can back off at that piece of it and readjust how I spend the time. Because once I do that, I think if it takes off the right way, it'll become more community. And then there's a synergy that you get in in this kind of work anyway, in the coaching end of things. You get synergies of people that and I won't have to, it's not that I'm chasing down people, because I'm not. I'm trying to just connect with enough people so I'm not chasing them down, because I don't want to sell to them. I don't want to sell to anybody.
Who do you coach?
What it'll be people who are either entrepreneurial, want to start a business, want to maybe move from one type of business to another, maybe leave a job and go into business, maybe leave one job and go to another job, but it's all around the idea of finance and how to do that. And that's my background. It's in finance and that kind of stuff. So, I guess what I'm saying is I keep reading this stuff repeatedly, and I think it's pretty clear that to be spending your time marketing to people in that old time icky marketing way isn't really the best way to be doing it. The best way is to be connecting to humans, because
I personally cold call every day honestly.
Do you?
I cold call every day, and I talk to a bank at least once a week.
Yeah, I don't think I could do that for what I do. I just don't think I would have enough clout.
It's not necessary for what I do either, but it's necessary to succeed in business, to have those skill sets. Like, you're going to have to build rapport with people constantly in 2 seconds, especially as a coach.
Like, yeah. What do you do? What is it you do, Nick?
I do business. Like, I do product sales. But I have to open accounts with people, and I have to open distribution channels. And when that comes up, I can't mess up. I can't say the wrong thing, and I can't leave the wrong impression on the person I'm speaking to. So because of that, I cold call 5 times a week so that I'm not rusty ever.
So Nick, do you track that though? So cold calling, is it your own business, or are you employed by somebody?
I'll just call up a health food store or something like that, because a lot of my stuff is natural health, and I'll just call them up and try to get my product in their store because I don't have it in their store right now.
Okay. And have you made the correlation between like how much time you're spending cold calling and then other ways through other relationships or connections or referrals or something like that? Are you distinguishing that in your time tracking?
No. The way
are you tracking?
What I track personally?
Yeah.
The way I try, and that's why I joined, because you're like, how to track every moment of your life. I was like, I wonder how this guy does it. What I do is I track half-hour segments. Usually work about 10 hours a day. So I make 20 boxes essentially, and I fill them all in, even if I'm a little wrong with what I did in that half-hour segment of my day.
Okay.
All day.
That makes sense.
That's just by hand.
Takes about
just by hand.
Yeah, by hand. It takes about 30 minutes to do. Maybe.
Okay.
Not even.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, I can look at an overview of my day and see this is what I did with it, and then I'll specifically mark down what I call my bitch out time. when I completely bitched out on my goals and went for something that had absolutely zero value to me, that I didn't find personally fulfilling or financially rewarding.
Well, Nick, I just want to acknowledge you for the fact that you're actually you have a process set up and you're doing it manually and you're sticking with it. Like, I got to acknowledge you for that, because that's tough to do. Like, I'm not sure if you heard the earlier part, but we started talking about just the apps that are out there, and I'll put a link in the thing, but I got a blog post coming out tomorrow, and I'll send links to the apps that I'm using to make that super easy for you. I don't know if you tried an app or not, but the one I use is A-Time Logger 2, and you can plug that stuff in real time, and the ticker goes. And you can create as many reports as you want to export it to Excel and all that kind of stuff. It might help.
That might help a good bit.
Yeah.
I still do it old school sometimes too. I mean, there's nothing wrong with writing it down on a piece of paper when you are someplace where you're not accessible to that. And I just make sure that every day my desk is clear. And that would be the kind of thing that needs to get into the right bucket, as you would say, the thing that needs to get entered. I don't like to do duplicate entering, but I do sometimes find that either an idea or something like how I'm spending my time would be the kind of thing I just put on a scrap of paper for the moment.
Yeah, it's habit forming. I guess if you're tracking it, that's a good thing. If it's working for you, that's good too. If it's one of those things where you have it on a spread or like a manual sheet, and you're kind of winging it a little bit, and you don't have a lot of confidence in your what you're actually putting in there, then I would say that might be useful to look at something else.
Yeah.
But I think the app is great. Like the technology nowadays.
I don't use a smartphone.
Oh, you don't use a smartphone? No. That would be tricky then. I'm not sure you could push it off then. I'm not sure you could pull that one off then. I have to think about it.
It took me a minute because I was like, this is genius. And I'm like, wait, only when I'm sitting at my computer.
Yeah, exactly. Laura says she's got a timesheet on her desk at the law office and writes down my time and narrative as I go, but that's because I have to. I promise you that if I ever stop practicing law, I will never again track my time like that. I loathe and despise it. I would not disagree with you, Laura. And I'm working with a client now who loathes and despises tracking her time, and she's actually running for the House of Representatives, and she's a lawyer as well, Laura. And she's getting docked because she's not submitting her time in a timely manner, for lack of better terms. So I think it's cost her like a couple $1,000s a year from her firm for not tracking her time. So we basically set up a routine where she's her morning ritual now, the first half an hour of the day, she's documenting her time for the day versus having to try to figure out a week later. Mm-hmm. everything that she's done in her little notebook and stuff like that. But that would be, if you're like required to do it, if somebody, it's like, if they're making you track your time, that'd be horrible. But for me, at least, I mean, this is driven all by me and wanting to improve, and being an engineer and a process improvement guy. Like I'm all about it, because I know that if I don't trust my own personal feelings and anecdotes about how I'm spending my time, I really like to go back and see really what's going on. So I'd rather track results than time. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. I mean, I think, but and kind of when I went through, I think you joined a little bit late, Laura, but absolutely tracking results. But for me, if my results aren't there, I got to know how I'm spending my time. Like if I don't know why the results weren't there, there's different ways you can get there. And please, and I know, Laura, sometimes you're in the chat, sometimes you call in, but it's for me, it helps me develop the strategies, because I know, okay, well, look how much time I spent with business development. Like for example, I only spent 2 hours last week. Well, I spent 6 or 7 hours doing business social media stuff. Like, was that really the best use of my time? And then I look before that, I'm like, well, I spent 5 or 6 hours reaching out to people, and I had, 4 or 5 enrollment sessions, that sort of stuff. So can you show us an example of your time tracking sheet? Like how detailed? Yeah, absolutely. I can do that. I'll try. Actually, I think I put a print screen out there recently. I'll dig it up and put it in the chat. I don't know. Can we do pictures here? I don't know. Well, to answer your question, Sonny, I'm going to have a blog post out tomorrow. I'll just do it with that. I put a link to my blog up here. So it's just makeitsnappyshow.com/blog, and the post will be out tomorrow. So I'll definitely do that. And I'll tag you on Twitter or something.
And I could never.
You can never what?
my time tracking is probably more personal than a diary.
Yeah.
I spent the first 10 minutes of this segment taking a shit.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you really wanted to hyper scan, I don't know. Like I don't think I have not gone into that much detail. Maybe I put that in a break time or something.
Yeah. That kind of reminds me of when I used to work at a call center, where everything that you're taking the time for is tracked, and they track them by a code that you punch into the phone, because there's sometimes where they're finished with the call and you have to log what happened and then finish with the task for that. They have a code for that. Then you also have your break time, which they give you a set amount that you can be in that code for that break. And then, of course, when they aggregate all those times, they put it all into what is called a key product indicator, a KPI. And that's where they aim for if you're spending too much time being in the code for sending out emails and not taking calls, because you kind of get dinged for that. If you're spending too much time in a less productive code, because they want you in there taking calls, because that's their moneymaker task. Oh yeah. As opposed with when you're running your own business, where it's pretty much all on you, and you just have to decide what you want to track. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying, for the people who are kind of joined after we had originally talked, but it does go back to like really, how do you want to spend your time? And you focus a lot on the family stuff, Nick, and for me, that's a big part of it. Like I look at, okay, yeah, I'm spending a lot of time on social media, but I'm trying, like, my goals, if my social media time is high and my one-on-one time with my boys is low, then it's like, okay, well, what other pieces of my time are high that I can, and how much value did that add? Can I take that away, and without, decreasing the value of my business? Like, am I still going to be able to make ends meet and be able to spend more time with my boys? It's just a really, like, if it's out there, and like I was telling Sonny, like if all it does, if you just track for 2 weeks and all it does is increase your awareness a little bit of how you're doing stuff, then at least anecdotally moving forward, you're like, okay, I got a little bit of problem in this area. Like I was watching TV for 12 hours last week, or 15 or 20, like that's a problem. Like I didn't know it was that much time. So then it's like, you're just more conscious of it. Cause I think the one thing that you learn, like I'm a Lean Six Sigma guy. You ever heard Lean Six Sigma, process improvement type stuff? Like if if you measure like what gets measured, just organically, it will improve just because you're measuring it. And so that's just like in manufacturing happens all the time.
I 100% agree with that. I didn't know what the system was called, but what you measure is what improves for sure. It's necessary.
Yeah.
What you do improves also. And that's like you were saying with family, like when I started tracking my time, I had really 4 hours a day that had beyond just no value to me. Because they had no value to me, they were draining my energy and they were draining my like happiness, because it was just time that I wasn't being myself or really even being a human being. Like I was just completely shut off, zombie mode, doing something that had no value to me. So like since tracking my time, I am able to spend like 2 hours, 3 hours a day on the phone with my family or in person with like my wife or like, with close friends, and do that while still working 10 hours a day and having downtime, because I like am introverted. So I do like a certain amount of downtime for myself. I spend that downtime now, I'll spend it meditating or doing something that actually as an introvert recharges me, instead of spending it watching the latest episode of whatever.
Nick, I completely agree. And that's another thing. Just looking at like, if you have a really good solid week of meditation and you look at your results, like Laura's saying, Laura, I'll get to your question in a second. If you look at your results and you're like, wow, I meditated for, a total of 2 or 3 hours last week, like that. And boom, like this is what happened. I was laser focused and I felt really good about the week. Then I think that if you can't remember everything. You can't hold everything like right up here. You got to get it down to some sort of system that you trust. And you're not going to remember that you had, was it 2 or 3 days that I meditated in a row, or did I hit it strong for 7 days? Like it all kind of runs together after a while. Like I can't tell you what I had for dinner 3 days ago, But looking at what Laura's saying, she said like if is tracking time less helpful than just being aware of what you're doing? If you spend hours on business development, but it's not actually effective, then the time isn't meaningful. Yeah, absolutely. So, and this is the thing that as humans that we struggle with, like we get in this, and I do it all the time. And it's my own self-imposed like sort of constraints. Like I get in this mode where I just try to check the box on different things and just get it like, oh, I did it. So I'm doing it right. Like it's just kind of checking your box. But like the issue is, I guess, is just like whatever you do, whatever systems you're putting together, like you got to be honest with yourself. Mm-hmm. Like don't put that you were doing business development if you were screwing around on Facebook for 45 minutes of that time. It's worthless. So there's got to be a way to hold yourself, or find a way to hold yourself accountable to tracking your time accurately. So I don't have a good answer for that, other than if you find yourself gaming your own system, then just stop and make it simpler, because it's obviously too complex. And do something like just track your goals, like just that one thing, and start from there. Get that quick win and then move on, versus trying to put together a complicated system. That's
why Nick, do you have any? Track the time that I waste, and I specifically use profanity for it when I write it down, because I won't do it again on your recording.
That's I got an editor. It's all good.
But the reason I do that is that you can go through and look at the time that you spent doing business development, like making a website, and you can look at that and discount half of it because you know that you really didn't do it. Like you weren't engaged in it, you weren't putting the time into it. You can just say, look, half of this time was completely wasted. I was just pretending to be doing the website that I was developing. It takes honesty and it takes reviewing what you did. But if you go through and review what you did and say, okay, where did I waste time? That's like, it sounds like a negative reinforcement initially. And when my mentor told me to do this, I was like, dude, this is like a brutally negative way to look at your life. But it immediately, like within a few weeks, became an incredibly positive thing, because I was extracting like hours, literally extra hours out of my day to build my business and to spend doing things that I loved.
So your methodology was that you only tracked waste, and that goes
not only waste.
It brings home with me.
You basically are trying to fish out waste by having things that you value as time spending activities, and tracking everything that's not that. or wasted time during that.
Oh, okay.
Like really being, really taking that out,
that's weird.
Putting it in a category and saying you spent 6 hours wasted and 5 hours working.
Yeah, because is it because you're more conscious of wasting time or something when you're in the moment? Like you're more likely to remember the time that you wasted versus the time that you actually got something done, or how, like psychologically, how does that?
For me, the result was
I can't wrap my head around that.
To be able to spend my time doing things I wanted to, and also being aware of when I wasn't spending time doing things I didn't. So I can effectively work. Like today, I didn't work that much because there was literally nothing to do. But if I have stuff to do, I can effectively work productively for 10 hours a day because I can measure the time invested in it and the results from that time invested because I'm actually keeping track of it. And then on days when I don't have something to do, I can put my time towards things that actually fulfill me and make me happy. And then I have energy when I do need to do something because I'm not vegging out doing nothing. Like that's a killer thing. Like and if you don't track it, you don't realize how killer it is to have. And almost everybody has a lot of hours that they are really genuinely wasting. And if you can get that number, even for like 3 days down to 1 or 2 hours wasted, you're going to like for me, it was like taking 4 shots of espresso. Like I woke out of bed, woke up out of bed with energy and ready to do stuff because I valued everything about being awake.
Yeah. I like the comments you made about your energy being drained and how powerful that is. Like you want to do less of the stuff that drains your energy and more of the stuff that lights you up. And if that'd be a really interesting strategy if you were to start tracking your time and sort of categorize everything with some sort of prefix of, hey, this is typically an energy draining activity. And this is typically something that makes me gain more energy. I wonder if you just looked at that paradigm, or maybe you just track those two different things. Like, hey, what I did for the last thing really excited me, and just kind of see how you feel over time and how much, I guess, the results at the end of the day are how the results changed. I think like looking at the piece that we haven't covered or that I didn't really cover in the content was just those metrics, those results that you're looking at. I think and I was trying to struggle with this when I was writing the blog post. Like, do you set the metrics before you start tracking the time or after you do the reflection on how you're spending your time? I think you always need to kind of know what you're going for. I think you need to know what your goals are. So how you kind of set the things up that you want to track. But I kind of feel like, okay, if I don't necessarily know what the problem is until I have the data to show like what the problem is, can I really set metrics to improve on? Like I feel like I almost need that baseline before I could set the metrics that matter. So I think it's like you don't know what problems you have until you measure it, I guess, for lack of better terms. There's a lot of chat going on here. Let me see what Jeff and Laura are saying here. Jeff saying, it depends on what you do to collect the data. In my case, I'm using it to help create more balance between my 4 hours in my life. First step was to collect. Now I'm trying to adjust things, especially trying to avoid mode switching that is so costly in terms of productivity. Yeah, mode switching is so tough, especially when you don't have a schedule, Jeff. And you got the 2-year-old walking in your office every couple of minutes, man. I feel you on that one. I'm looking forward to talking to you about that, by the way. Laura says, I do agree there's value in tracking time for some period just to get a reality check on how you're spending your time. Same thing as writing down everything you eat for a few days to see what you're really eating, or keeping track of what you spend for time tracking. I see the value only doing for a specific period of time, week or whatever, and then taking action. Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that if you're in kind of if I can reflect on that a little bit, if you're in kind of a mode to where you're doing generally the same types of activities each day, and you're not like investigating what's working and you're testing things and things like that. Like you're just in a normal work mode. You're kind of happy with where your results are, and you're just sort of tweaking. I think that you do that initial sprint, if you will, for 30 to 60 days, perhaps. see where that data shakes out, and you have more of an awareness of what you're doing. Then you're conscious of it, you're aware of it until you start slipping back. So if you ever study any sort of Lean Six Sigma process improvement stuff, you always slip back to some sort of steady state. Like improvement just won't sustain. You always kind of slip back because you get into old habits and all that thing. So I think it's you could look at it more of a periodic thing. So instead of tracking every moment of your life for your entire life, maybe you do it every quarter, for a period of 30 days or something like that, just to see where you're at. And that might just be, and then it's almost a project, right? So you're more vested because it's not just a daily habit. It's more of like, okay, I know I see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm going to do this for 30 days, see where I'm at, make some decisions, some strategic decisions about my business, and then do it again in another 3 months or something, or maybe another half a year. So yeah, I think that kind of takes it back to what's personal to you and what's important and what do you think really gonna, like, what yourself. Everybody knows themselves better than anybody else. I think you just got to do what works for you.
Another thing about the way that I do it that kind of pertains to that is you have to, in order to be not depressed when you track your time, you have to spend 5-10 minutes in the morning working out just mentally what you're going to do with that day. Because otherwise you're just like benchmarking. It's like running your pop quiz every day. Like you're benchmarking your progress with your time, but you're not defining what you're going to do with your time before you start your day. So for me, like when I started actually like waking up in the morning and usually I'll just spend 3 to 5 minutes mentally going over, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And like, this is the stuff that if I get to the end of the day, I've accomplished it. I feel like I succeeded at it. That way, when I benchmark it, it's not a direct attack on myself. Because in a lot of ways, like tracking, like if you get detailed with it, it feels like a personal attack on my own self-esteem. Like,
yeah, no, I could totally see that, Nick. I think it's just like in the productivity space that Laura and I are in, and that's the one real thing you could do to make progress is do your weekly reviews, plan your days. And I do it the night before versus in the morning because of the decision fatigue issue where, I try to make a minimal amount of decisions, just kind of go, like, how do I set myself up to where I can just kind of go and execute the plan? And that way I make all the decisions in advance and I get to sleep on them and recharge. So it kind of goes to that energy thing you're talking about. And yeah, like if you're deliberate about in advance about how you're spending your time, then you're going to feel a lot better and not beat yourself up like you're talking about. Yeah. I'm not sure what that, I'm not sure if the headphones are rubbing against your shirt or something, Nick, but
is it making
a little bit of feedback I'm getting. It might be. I think so. I don't know unless it's Roy. But
that would be on my end here.
Yeah, Roy's an audio guy, so it's his business. It better not be, Roy. Come on.
I remember having some technicalities with Blab before, but it was a software thing. But that's why I just gave up on the camera thing, and you can only hear me.
You got to stay in your lane, man. Stay in your lane.
Better sound good than to look good, because I could just post up a still, and everybody will see my good-looking mug.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. Jeff says we also know how we're spending our time or what we're eating until we actually track it. I think, did you say you don't, Jeff, did you mean to say you don't actually know how you're spending your time until we track it, or been surprised we're not doing what we thought? I completely agree with that last statement there. Like, yeah, you just don't know how you're spending your time until you see the data come back. It's always shocking. I mean, any study, I've been through like just hundreds of Lean Six Sigma studies and stuff over time with corporations. No, he means we think we know. Okay, gotcha. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what you're saying definitely makes sense. But and all the studies that I've seen in corporate where, you get a consultant come in and you start working with the teams, you start collecting data and looking at it, like the results come back and everybody's like, what? Like it always happens every single study. And is as simple as some of the stuff is, it's like, no, this person's like hand walking this piece of paper from one office to the other, 24 times a day. So that person's wasting like an hour and a half a day. That kind of stuff comes back all the time and nobody even knows. So I think we just take for granted, and it goes back to like, we're really optimistic about what we think we can achieve, like we think way too highly of ourselves. And part of the game is how do you how do you trick yourself up, or how do you set yourself up to not fail? Like, how do you set up all your infrastructure to where you can't fail to the best of your ability is part of it. Let me see what they're saying here. No, we know, but then we're totally wrong. So we think we know ourselves and we're totally off base. Absolutely. You were more concise. Yeah, Laura's very good at being concise. That's why she's the productive woman. So Laura's got a podcast called The Productive Woman, if you guys don't know already. So, and I can't wait to see her at Podcast Movement. It's going to be awesome. So anyway, guys, it's 9:56. I started at 8:45. Started early so I could deliver that like solo content. But let me see.
That was some good stuff.
As long as we're, well, thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah. So I'm going to keep doing this. I think I like the format of just kind of me getting on and just rehashing what I'm going to talk about on the blog post every week. And then I'll just open it up like we did today. And hopefully you guys will join next week. I do it every Wednesday night now. I'm used to saying 9 p.m., but I'm going to start saying 8:45 p.m. And the reason I do it, I got 2 boys on the way. Mm-hmm. And by the way, guys, my wife she's like really, really close to giving birth. Like on the 21st is coming. She's having contractions. And I'm just like, really? I'm not ready, man. I need more time. I need more time. I'm so scared. But no, she's about to pop. I'm not sure if she's watching. I don't think she's on right now. But
my wife,
man, it's getting so close.
Absolutely sure she was pregnant about 2 months ago.
And I thought really? But she's not.
She wasn't. But okay. She was very sure, enough that I like believed her. And so I was like, oh my goodness. Like I thought I had everything together. And now I'm thinking about kids and like, oh God, I got to take it to a whole another level. Yeah, and I make good money, but it's like still like, oh my God, like kids, like, no, it wasn't about money. It was just about like my life and the way my head is like aligned. I'm like, wow, I do not want to like pass this crap off on my kids.
So you don't have kids right now?
No, I don't have kids yet. And I'm happy to have another year or two without them.
I understand, man. Well, last year when I resigned last year. I left my very comfortable corporate job last year, almost a year ago now. And the day after, I'm not even kidding you, the day after I put my resignation in, my wife said, "Hey, guess what? I'm pregnant," and I had to put my business out there, and we ended up losing that baby. It was only a couple of weeks, but so it wasn't like a real pregnancy, like there was fertilization or whatever. It wasn't like an implant or whatever the technical term is. So, but anyway, she did get pregnant again, but that feeling of like, wow, I had this whole plan of like what I was gonna do, and now I got this third kid, like. What's going on, guys? Like, it's crazy. So, anyway,
best of luck to you.
I digress a little bit, but that's why I'm kind of passionate about it. I like the fact that you brought in how you spend your personal time and your family and stuff, Nick, because it really is important. I look at like everything that I look at productivity wise, like if I had a tagline, it would be productivity with purpose. Actually, I kind of do have a tagline because I got a Facebook group that we call it Productivity on Purpose, like POP. So my last name is Snap. So there's a POP, and I'm still looking for a crackle to come in there. But it really is like, there's no reason to be productive if there's not purpose behind it. I believe that. Like I'll say that to the day I die. Yeah. If you don't have any reason. So if you don't have any reason to track your time, if you're just doing it for the sake of doing it, or you're gonna fool yourself and game yourself, then don't even try. But really look at what's important to you and how do you set up those metrics and those goals around that, so that you can be strategic about how you spend your time. Because we're all working too much. Like it's got to stop. Like there's got to be a way. There's way that I think through productivity, that's your tool where you can really get your time back. So that's my goal. I want to help parents get their time back. That's kind of what I'm all about. So anyway, a little bit of chat, Laura, and I'll stay quiet at this point. Yep. Gotcha. Guys. All right. Well, hey, thanks everybody for joining. Next week, 8:45. This is accountability too. Like productivity is about accountability. So now I'm telling you guys, I'm gonna have another blog post. I'm gonna present the content next week. So I'm a man of my word. Like if I say that, I'm gonna do it. That's just my thing. So think about ways you can hold yourselves accountable to tracking your time or whatever it is you want to accomplish. And we'll talk about it next week.
All right, Nick. It's good hanging out with you.
All right, thanks guys. Nice meeting you. Yeah, thanks for joining. Appreciate it.
Snappy.
All right. Oh, I got no choice. Seriously. See ya.
You're gonna have to boot me. Oh no. How do I close? It won't close.